To be honest, I didn't really even plan on protesting. I'm not one to hold a sign. I believe that when I did choose to go out there, it was more out of curiosity of what was happening all around me.
For me, protesting started at home. It started with my mother, it started with my grandmother, it started with watching the matriarchs of my family.
I come from a mixed racial background, so my parents were always aware of social issues and things of that nature. And growing up, I paid attention and wrote letters and did things like, as a kid that you do.
I think I definitely started being more active when I surrounded myself with more politically active friends and more woke people, and then it just kept climbing.
I love people, and I'm an empath, so I just feel so much when it comes to people going through things, and I do whatever I can to make people happy. So I'm a people pleaser. Activism is very important to me right now because I get to actually help people help people.
I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Today is Thursday. It is June 11th, 2020. This is a regular Flagstaff City Council work session. I'd like to provide notice that the Flagstaff City Council has the ability to recess into executive session for legal advice should we so choose to do so. Ms. Drum, do you have items for public participation tonight?
Yes, Mayor, I do. We have approximately 150 public comments.
I definitely think we made an impact when we did the letter writing campaign right before the budget, and 400 plus of us wrote in.
It was a record day for me. I think for the city of Flagstaff in terms of public comment. We started that meeting, I want to say at 2 p.m. that day, and we finished at 2 a.m.
And so with that, I will start with our first comment. Please do not take the bait. This idea is a completely moronic idea that has no basis.
Hello, Mayor Evans and City Council members. We need a full reform of the way policing is done here in Flagstaff, Coconino County, the state of Arizona, and America.
The fact that this is even up for discussion is absurd.
Topics should include tactics, bias, the budget, defunding and redistribution of resources.
And I will not vote for any of you again. And in fact, will participate in campaigns.
We are not immune from these same systematic pressures that disproportionately affect our most vulnerable citizens.
I've documented and taken narrative testimony, either through video or written form, of unsheltered relatives here that, are everything from being choked by law enforcement agents, cuffs being applied way too tight, being beaten repeatedly. And they don't file complaints because they don't expect anything to happen.
I got stabbed in my face, beat with a billy club.
5 times in the head with a taser. And more right here, more of them, but I thought they were gonna shoot me. They had me at gunpoint.
They're just rude and mean, and they're real impolitical.
At my old apartment, I was checking my mail. Myself, I'm a very oblivious person, right? I get lost. I had my earbuds in. I was listening to music. Open the mailbox. I'm getting the mail out at this point, and I turn around, right? And there's this officer, private security officer, who's got his weapon, drawn. And I jump, and he said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." He puts his weapon away, and innately, right? That's an encounter that's perception versus intention.
It's all about racial profiling. They're looking for us natives, because I see all these white people doing what we shouldn't be doing. They try to pick us up for the stupidest things. Jaywalking, or somebody just standing there doing nothing. I've been arrested for that, for standing around doing nothing.
I've reported, excessive use of force on them before, and they denied me because, you have to go to their chief or whatever, and they said, well, if you don't like it, then don't get arrested. And it's like, I can't really even help it, I doesn't matter. I go out there. If I'm walking, I get harassed. If I'm riding a bike, I get harassed. If I'm in the public, I'm gonna get harassed.
When I got thrown in jail and arrested, I had a backpack, a phone. I made $60 that day, okay? I play music for a living. And they cut my backpack, they stole my money, and they stole my phone, and they released me. The time before that, I was in jail in November. They released me without my shoes. They stole my shoes. And it just snowed. How the fuck are you going to do that to a person?
Flagstaff is a segregated city. It's a city that has a population that's connected to the universities, that has a middle class and has a particular kind of income, and another part where people live in a little more difficult situations, where it's a little harder to make a living and engage in those. And those two populations didn't quite meet in Flagstaff. And that is that a lot of the protests that went on one side of the town were mostly a particular kind of protester that engaged in those. And the protests that were on the other side of town were a little slightly different because the town is slightly different.
Flagstaff is a very nice settled down place, I feel.
I hear a lot of people talk about how Flagstaff has the potential to be an island of sanity, where we have compassionate systems that are engaged and that we learn to see varying perspectives and bring them to bear in conversation. I think that in order to do that, we have to learn how to have group culture in Flagstaff, and it's not really, I don't see that very broadly.
If you would have asked me this like 3 years ago, I would have been like, oh, it's a huge liberal town, everyone loves each other, hippy dippy, everyone, it's a great thing. And as things have kind of fallen apart over the last 4 years or whatever, and nationally, we've seen kind of that liberal veil uplift, that it's not as liberal as that I thought, or a lot of people thought.
As I started going to these protests more and more, I started realizing that Flagstaff has a very hippie type of feel to these protests, and normally I'd be like okay with that, but in this situation I can't make peace with the police.
Flagstaff is a settler colony. It's stolen land from indigenous folks. It's right at the base of a mountain that's holy to 13 indigenous nations. It's culturally significant to all 22 indigenous nations that reside in so-called Arizona.
Flagstaff is, for the most part, fairly quiet town. About 65,000 population, I think. When NAU's in session, brings it up to about 80, 85. I think we're right around there now. A heavy tourism industry. We have close to the Grand Canyon. We have a ski resort in the winter on native lands. The way laws are enforced and the laws that exist are no different than anywhere else. It just might be on a smaller scale.
We're probably a smaller place. We're kind of a divided space. And we're probably more average than you can imagine.
We're a drinking town. So we have a lot of bars, a lot of breweries, and public drunkenness is very common. When white people walk down the street drunk, no issues. When a native person, especially a homeless native person, walks down the street drunk, they get taken and thrown into a cell.
Go have a drink at Collins and step out for a cigarette and walk over to Heritage Square and just hang out on the corner for a second. And I absolutely promise you, if you wait there for an hour tops, you will see transients getting rudely rousted by police officers.
It might be hard to get some work done around here right now.
You can see white college kids drunk, stumbling into the street, doing whatever the hell they want, not getting arrested, not going to jail, but then see someone sitting on the rocks at Heritage Square, not bothering anyone, trying to be out of the way, maybe trying to find a place to sleep for the night, getting rousted, getting arrested, getting accosted, getting harassed, going to jail, having their freedom taken away when they had nowhere else to go.
Excuse me, do you know what's happening around here?
Tequila Sunrise is going on today.
Oh, so everyone's drunk?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a Flagstaff tradition for homecoming.
Tequila Sunrise, I'm an NAU alum. It's hard for me to hate on it.
I haven't ever participated in Tequila Sunrise, but I was down there once to collect signatures on a ballot. And there's college kids all over the place, incredibly drunk, pissing on the side of the street, acting obnoxious, breaking things. And the cops don't seem to have much of an issue with it.
I understand the bad way it looks when there's a bunch of, college kids running amok, public urination, the same thing that a lot of our unsheltered friends get picked for. I didn't understand that until several years ago when it was pointed out to me, because I was like, oh, Tequila Sunrise, what's the harm? And then it was pointed out to me like, well, these people get arrested for just sitting around and being drunk, and all these kids are doing the same thing for no, recourse.
Adding to the mix, out-of-state college kids on their own for the first time, and our growing population of transients our police have their hands
I've never been made to feel unsafe by a Native person in this town, but I have crossed the street to avoid groups of belligerent, drunk, young white men who can act with impunity. We all know that Flagstaff is a drinking town, and while every night many citizens wander the streets drunk and yelling,
As issues in our society continue to polarize and confirmation bias is clearly rampant on all sides of issues, I inquire and direct the council to focus on education.
I'm aware of the numbers, the disparity with Native Americans getting arrested at the rate of 50%, while only 8% live in Flagstaff.
I've been told that, college kids from NAU get a different response by police than a kid who grew up here on the east side, for example.
When you're talking about racial disparities in crime and arrest, we know that there's huge disparities across the nation, right? That this occurs, and it has been going on for a really long time. And the thing to understand is that different parts of the United States have different kind of racial configurations. So that means that in certain parts of the United States with a history of slavery and other kinds of history, you're going to have a particularly black and white pole in relation to that, and black people are targeted in particular kinds of ways. Because of the history here in the Southwest, in particular in Arizona, that we're so close to the Navajo Nation, our dynamic is a little bit different. It is going to be a distinction between white and Latinos and white and indigenous population. And the indigenous population, in particular in our town, gets targeted at a much higher rate.
They said I went flatline like twice in the hospital in the emergency room. She said she was sitting in the waiting room. They were all around me trying to revive me. But I went flatline twice too because they went. I have a heart condition and they went and tased me that many times in the head. They're not supposed to get tased on top of the head. I thought I got shot is what I thought.
Indigenous people have a higher rate of murder based upon population than any other ethnicity. If we look at that fact, that statistic, it's not by accident, it's by design. Policing as an institution was never established to protect indigenous and black folks or people of color. It was established to protect the settler colonizers and their property, and as it evolved, to protect the wealthy from the poor.
You know what the biggest problem with Flagstaff, Arizona is? We're a tourist-run business and they don't want us to be seen. Our society is hinged on the tourism industry, and they don't want addicts out in the front. They don't want people panhandling and flying signs.
And they protect the same thing police everywhere protect. They protect businesses, the university, Capitol, which is largely controlled, even here in Flagstaff, mostly by middle and upper class white folks. Businesses take priority. The city council and the Chamber of Commerce have always gone hand in hand, and the police do their bidding.
What's happening here in Flagstaff is no different than what's happening in many other places. It requires human beings shopping and engaging in consumption in order for the economy to move forward. It's part of why we're having a crisis right now, is that people are staying at home and not shopping as much, and therefore the economy is kind of tanking.
If you look at the police presence even on private property downtown, you see that they're effectively acting as a private security force and inventory control force for downtown businesses.
People would say, no, you can't wash your clothes here. Why? Because why? Because you're homeless. We don't want you in here.
We have experienced a devastation of particular kinds of social services that existed at the city and county and state level that existed but when I was younger, and they've been dismantled ever since. So social services for homeless people.
I was homeless when I first moved here because literally trying to get into a place is hard because everything's so expensive.
We have a saying in Flagstaff, because we have beautiful San Francisco peaks here, poverty with a view.
In 2005, the National Coalition for the Homeless came out with a list ranking different cities in the United States based off of how mean they are to the unsheltered population. And Flagstaff achieved the distinction of being in the top 10.
You know, I see them having to lock up homeless people all the time. People drunk on the sidewalk. I guess that's a police function.
I think right now the conversation needs to be on what we want to refund. We need to fund public services. We need to fund homeless services. We need to fund mental health services.
Because I've worked in the mental health system for a long time, I certainly have lots of experience of asking police to do a well check, and I guess that my bottom line dynamic is that I believe that most police are not well trained and to recognize all kinds of mental health diagnoses and conditions and dynamics, and that by and large, probably if we trained people who are trained in the social services, who have mental health training and background, they're much more well equipped to be able to intervene in a situation and de-escalate.
This is 723, right?
I think so.
All right. Watch this corner here. We're going to set up perimeter. Hey! Show me your hands! Show me your hands! If you have a gun, do not reach for it. Put your hands up!
Day 43, we need units to the north of us. He's walking towards the back.
I can't see what's in his right hand. It's something silver. I can't make it out. Drop what is ever in your right hand now. That is a gun. Drop the gun! Drop the fucking gun now. Dude, you're gonna fucking die in a second. It is definitely a gun. He was swinging it around. If I have a clear shot.
31, I got a shot now.
Drop the fucking gun in your right hand now! If you bring that up one more time, I will shoot you! Drop it! Drop the gun! Fuck!
Is he down?
Down. Fuck! Where's the gun? Where's the gun? Can't see his other hand right now. We need to get this safe before we get medicated.
Yeah. Okay, I think...
Your investigators, I don't think he's going to be reaching for it.
No, I think he's 901. We had him on the flank.
Yeah. Just give me a real quick rundown.
Guy's right here. I'm still red, by the way.
Yeah.
Guy's right here. He's giving him commands. He starts moving back here. Me and Rowden come to the flank to box him in. We can see him. He waves the gun at us. We're taking cover behind these trash cans. Starts waving the gun around. 998.
Okay. Just like waving me like that.
I clearly saw him go like this.
Okay. Was he saying anything?
He said, "Leave me alone." That was all I could hear.
When we're talking about how many people are killed by law enforcement, it's a contentious issue, meaning that the United States did not keep track of those numbers until relatively recently. And, so that means that there was no data being collected. So when some people asked, like in 2012, 2013, how many people that was, there was no information, there was no statistic or no number. So the information is relatively newly assembled in that. And it can vary somewhere between 1,500 and I've heard as high as 2,500.
How many people have been murdered by law enforcement this year? We can't even keep count. The bodies keep piling up.
someone calls 911. How do we respond to that call, that crisis call? Are we sending an individual who's of the police department with a badge and a gun to a call when they're not needed? At times, what is needed is a crisis response team.
Break apart what a cop has to deal with. If it's a mental health issue, get a mental health professional in there. If it's like a traffic issue, maybe have like a traffic person go without a gun.
If society can figure out a way to take some of the burden off of the police, maybe we wouldn't need so many police. I don't know.
As a tax-paying citizen and mother, I personally feel cutting the budget on any police department would be a tragedy. We need officers of the law protecting our communities. I do agree we need to monitor our peace officers a bit closer. At times, they do act as though they are above the law.
Defunding the police will not solve any issues. The fact is that we need social services to offset the calls police officers receive for mental health.
These men and women wear uniforms and equipment that may intimidate those who see them. But under their uniforms are caring human beings who risk their lives every day to serve our community. They protect us, keep our streets safe, ensure our schools are safe, support our community.
They are not social workers. They are not crisis mental health professionals. They are not therapists. They are not experts in homelessness. They are not addiction specialists, and they shouldn't be.
I think in anything, when you have a lot of emotion involved, there's always going to be, on both sides, tension.
All these police are protecting poor people instead of protecting the crowd. And there's these fucking assholes with Blue Lives Matter saying that they support the movement when they don't.
What's Blue Lives?
Blue Lives means cops, so they're saying cops now. Cops over black lives. Let's go be with our people, please.
Black lives matter! Your lives just don't fucking matter!
When a black person or a person of color is killed, what do the All Lives Matter people say? Nothing. They don't say anything, but if they cared so much about blue lives and all lives, then why aren't they mad when black people die all the time at a higher rate?
Come back and talk to them tomorrow. Right now, stay with your people and do not let them distract you from your message. Brother, I know it's weak. Speak it. That shit is weak, man. I'm not trying to speak on that shit, bro. That shit weak.
You get people talking in an open-hearted, open-minded way where you're listening to another person with the goal to understand rather than to respond. When we can get people in the masses doing that, rather than just watching TV and then regurgitating some half-assed facts that they heard from the CNN, Microsoft News or something like that, you're really sitting down and using your critical thinking skills.
Fuck the police! Fuck the police! Fuck the police! Fuck the police! Fuck the police!
There is plenty of data that shows that as police engage in very specific kind of behavior, it will more likely escalate a confrontation. And that behavior is dressing up in riot gear, engaging, pepper spraying people, being forceful, coming in and moving populations, that as soon as police begin to engage in that, it'll increase a clash.
This is when y'all come out. This is when y'all come out. That shit crazy. You actually speaking a lot more than your words, bro. This shit is crazy.
What I would want any mental health professional to do is to physically separate the people in the situation and to allow just calming, relaxing, essentially mindfulness tools to be used to, in the moment, de-escalate the situation so nobody gets hurt. So there isn't any process of trying to make decisions in the moment about what needs to happen in any kind of legal kind of way.
I think, though, when we feed into their narrative of what they think our, liberal left is or whatever the other side thinks, it feeds them.
If you want a true democracy, then everybody has to feel like their opinion is valued and valid. And I don't care if you disagree with me way on the other side of things.
And we want to calm and de-escalate the situation immediately, separate the parties, have a listening ear, and then, third step of that process would be to find a modality for there to be a problem-solving conversation.
Guys, we need to go. We need to leave. All realize at 8 they can use some force.
The very groups who proposed this idea are the same that caused millions in damages due to violent riots.
While paired with other phrases like F the police and good cops don't exist is extremely concerning.
Black Lives Matter, Antifa, the media, academia, corrupt politicians, and even the church are the tools they use and are using to carry out their Marxist agenda.
After this is all over, they'll be looking for people's homes to break into and loot and steal.
When this whole started, I saw posts on Facebook from people saying, oh, there's going to be people coming from Phoenix in buses to protest and break windows in Flagstaff. And I knew from my research that that's just insane. That's not what's going to happen. There's people in the streets here and there's people angry. And this is a way of dismissing the fact that you have an issue here locally. Just like we have an issue everywhere in the United States, it also exists here.
Here in Flagstaff specifically, that I'm aware of, there's only been one issue of property damage, which was when somebody threw a brick through a window. And from what I've been told, as the second that person did that, the majority of the group pulled that person out and said, hey, you can't do that here.
The protests in Flagstaff have been very few arrests and very relatively little property destruction, almost non-existent. I think that probably most protests have been like that, so that we're probably more common in relation to, if you think about how many protests there were over the last 2 months, we're probably much more average. That means that most protests probably in most cities look like this.
So I went to a Black Lives Matter protest for the first time ever in Flagstaff, and my first experience was, it was fine, it was okay. But I did think something was weird. I did think that something was off. The message was skewed. And the whole message was like, abolish the cops, we hate the cops, we gotta get the cops out of here. But then there was a black man that like kind of turned that narrative into more of a peaceful narrative of we gotta love the cops and we have to work with the cops to find a solution.
These officers today, they guided us here. We've been in close contact with them to make sure nothing happened to us as protesters, protecting our rights.
And to get the cops involved into something like that is possibly necessary, but when you make that an initial point in your political stance, it rubs me the wrong way because I don't believe in that. I don't think you can side with the oppressor because they have no motivation to change anything.
That does not mean we are anti-police. We are anti-police brutality, and there is a difference. There's a difference. Flagstaff United.
Flagstaff United.
Flagstaff United.
Flagstaff United.
Flagstaff United.
Flagstaff United.
And that is the message we are about to send to the world.
I was unsure about the entire thing, and I felt wronged by him. I'm going to be pissed off at them. And I feel like everyone in Flagstaff and in any white-dominated city should absolutely feel the same because this needs to stop.
Please take a knee in solidarity. And the chaplain here is going to lead us in prayer.
Great God, creator of all, lawgiver, judge, the one who weeps at injustice and the suffering of innocents, hear our prayer. Our nation is in peril. Heal our land, O Lord. Bring your peace to our community, that we can come back together, that we can unite as never before. Let not our anger turn into violence, but grant that we can work together for needed reform. Heal our land, bring us together. Amen.
If you're telling me that implicit bias training has the ability to prevent an officer from shooting me down while I go to get my mail, or shooting my brother down when he goes to Wendy's, or God forbid shooting my mother down, then I'd say give them all the damn funding that they need for that.
Helping the police be more diverse and more equitable might include adding funding for programs that teach police another way to begin with. So the word defunding may not happen in the beginning. We might actually put more money towards education.
I see a lot of people that see these protests as bullshit. I think a particular example is when there was that Blue Lives Matter protest, and that clashed with the Black Lives Matter protest, and there was a few altercations, and eventually, later during the day, the Black Lives Matter protesters who had a mic gave the Blue Lives Matter protesters a mic, which I thought was so awful, so bad. Exactly what you're not supposed to do in a protest like that. Particularly because those racist minds do not need to be amplified.
A lot of people believe that these institutions, the only way to reform a corrupt institution that was corrupt at its foundation is to tear it down to its foundations and to rebuild it again. I totally understand that logic and that mentality.
No Trump! No KKK! No racist USA! No Trump! No KKK! No racist USA!
We talk about burning it down, but that is very superficial. And like I said, you'll just rebuild the house, and you'll rebuild the house the same way until you understand that something in that design needs to change. But I'm 20 years old. I don't want to have to burn down the house 60 times or 100 times or 300 years worth of houses or 400 years worth of houses in the hopes that in 700 years they'll just get tired of building the house. We know that the Native American populations and indigenous people are disproportionately represented in our justice system, in our courts, in our jails, right? And disproportionately arrested at higher rates for nonviolent, victimless crimes like public intoxication, public disturbances. How do we change that, right? But that discussion takes the police, right? I'm a strong proponent that the only way that we can tackle institutionalize anything is with an approach that not only comes from outside, but also from within, right? That's the in an institution.
There's so many lives that are going to continue to be lost as long as we have this institution in place, regardless of what kind of reforms or accountability or citizen review boards, that people think are going to reform the police to the point where they don't have the propensity to murder people on the street or persistently target people based upon their skin color and so forth. No, that's not going to be reformed away because it's part of the institution. As I mentioned before, it's the core structure.
When you're dealing with a system that has been in power for 400 plus years, reform is not the answer anymore. We are done talking about reform. We need to build our communities. We need to protect each other. We need to defund and abolish the police.
We're going to have these hard conversations. We're going to have these hard conversations.
If anybody wants to have a conversation that does not include working with the police, we'll be over here. I respect that that's what you want to do.
Right.
But that's not the direction.
We want to have the conversation. Because the only way we understand where we're going is if I understand where you are and where I am, so we can get there together.
The conversation in this room?
The conversation isn't happening when you refuse to talk to somebody.
Check it out. No desire to have a dialogue with the police. I respect you. We're going to be over here. We're going to be over here.
He ain't talking. Bye. Y'all can go ahead. Bye.
Any system of power like that, especially one that relies on violence to enforce its rules, will never secede its power willingly. So when I say abolish the police, I really mean abolish the police. If we defunding, I'm all for. If we take 25% right now, awesome. But we're coming for another 25 next year.
conceptualize the police problem as a problem that an institution has because certain police officers are engaging in behavior that is bad, and therefore you have bad apples and good apples, that kind of language, and that institution, what it needs to do is it needs to train, reform, engage, create situations whereby the police are no longer engaging in these kinds of behavior, and as we engage in this kind of behavior, eliminate this behavior, justice will arrive, right? If you have that kind of understanding and you conceptualize the world in that way, then the answers you're going to move forward and the things that you're going to engage are going to be determined by that assumption. And so that means you're going to be like, hey, bring the police officer. This might be one of the good ones. Let's engage with them. Hey, let's change. Let's do more training. Do that. If you believe or if you construct police as an institution, so if you see police, that police is an institution that has a long history in relation to the maintenance of social order, and that the role of police, regardless of the individual, being good, bad, it doesn't matter, that the institution maintains the social order, and that's what it's always going to do, regardless of the goodness or badness of the social order, then the institution itself might be a problem. If you engage and you think of police at that particular level, then that means that the kinds of things you're going to argue for are going to go beyond reform. You're gonna say reform won't do this because we've tried reform because it's the function of police, and the police is functioning in a very specific kind of society, and therefore we need to, and police are just the front line, maintaining an unequal social order, and therefore we need to disband or defund, whatever it is that they're arguing, and you're making all these different kind of arguments. That particular position and this particular position are not going to be able to join together. So, because they are in some ways a little antithetical to each other.
Whether you have attained class consciousness or not, if you are a member of the working class, you're my comrade. And so while maybe some people have not yet sufficiently radicalized to see the many ways that the machinations of capitalism oppress and damage everyone in society, I hesitate to say that their hearts aren't in the right place or that they're bad, because at the end of the day, I recognize that my fight isn't with them. It's not with the opposing camp, and it's not even with the Blue Lives Matter people. My fight's always going to be with the ruling class and with the elite. It's with the bourgeois.
There was an instance where I noticed that the truck where these individuals lived, they had the flags on them, and it kind of enraged me because I didn't really understand, these individuals, they have this flag. Does that also mean that they support Donald Trump, who I don't support? And, that was kind of where the misconception happened, where I got a little upset, and I went by and I had to say some words. Back up. But then at the counter protest just recently, actually talking to the individuals with the flags and actually understanding, this is what they believe in, and not that they don't believe in what we all are. Goal is Black Lives Matter, and that's what's the issue at hand.
What happened to George Floyd was not right. That's not why we're out here with our blue flags and our first responder flags. We're out here because police defunding is not the answer. Maybe some change is needed, but police defunding is not the answer.
They are trying to give a voice to police who don't have voices, but also a lot of them have family members who are cops.
Yeah, my brother's a cop, yes.
I feel like once they understand, they can actually, be that ally that we need. But, I think the time is not now for them to be having their flags. Everybody has their First Amendment right to do whatever they feel, but to kind of read the room, you see, we're here for, George Floyd, and that's what we're talking about. We're the abolish the police, that's a whole different, group.
And I feel like this is why we can't get anything accomplished.
We all have one main common goal. It's just no one's kind of thinking everything through.
And then it's don't try to add Black Lives Matter into your police shit. That has nothing to fucking do. Yes, police brutality, but don't the Black Lives kind of stuff.
That's my mom. I don't think that those are necessarily. I'm saying that all lives matter. No, they don't. Is that racist itself?
Blue lives matter does not exist. You can choose to be a cop, but you can't choose to be black.
Hey, fuck you! Hey, what?
You don't want to go. Hey.
Want to steal your love.
The movement's been going for over 22 days nationally. So for them to come down here one day to show their support kind of says to me that they don't really support Blue Lives, that they kind of just want to razzle us.
All everybody's looking at is just this little video footage. Right. Okay, they're not looking at the whole reason of it. Okay, why was the guy passed out, intoxicated in a drive-thru? Okay, we'll just use this most recent one, okay? Why was that?
We're the same people, whether we're wearing black or not. We were the same people before all of this started. We were neighbors, we were friends, we said hi to each other, we got close to each other, we high-fived. And these very same people are hidden behind masks now and so polarized.
You know, look at the people that, the pedophiles, you know? Why aren't we out here picketing them every day? There goes that F-bomb again. You guys are stuck on the F-bomb. Why is that? And why aren't you pro-life? If you believe Black Lives Matter, why aren't you pro-life?
If the system that you talk about was based off of that Constitution that didn't even include me, God knows what flaws exist in that Constitution, in that system for people that look like me. And that's an experience that you would not understand. And even worse, that's an experience that you're not trying to understand or to hear.
And it's gotten worse with masked people versus unmasked people. We lost that sort of connection between each other. So I think we have a lot of stranger danger going on.
I don't have anything against a cop. My dad was a cop for the longest time. Okay, my problem is
a disagreement that nobody wants to get together. Nobody wants to talk.
About what? I don't understand, because my biggest thing is like, where's the problem? We just want more funding into different.
I might like spicy food and you might not. So there's an argument there. You know what I mean?
Wait, what do you mean?
You don't like spicy food?
I do like spicy food.
Well, let's say you didn't.
Okay.
There's an argument there. So we'll never get into it.
But an argument is when you try to prove someone wrong. I'm trying to understand your point of view.
Train your people.
The people who live and interact with those officers in nicer parts of town don't necessarily share the same experience with those same officers that people in other parts of town do.
Because when someone's killing your family, who are you going to call?
What family?
Them motherfuckers are killing your family.
All right. We just talked about this. We are not going to make a change if we're arguing. We're not.
I'm not working with them. We're just standing here.
If you're talking about a real movement, there's going to be lots of difference. If you're talking about like a very small mobilization, then people are going to relatively agree. The fact that we're talking about new groups with ideas that are clashing tells me that this is a new moment. Because some people are just waking up to some of these things. Some people have been engaged for many years, and then people have to go through these particular kinds of process in terms to understand what different kinds of positions are.
I'm a police abolitionist.
Right, okay,
I don't
police.
believe that they should be here.
That has nothing to do with my question.
Actually, it does, because some of us are police organizers for 10 years. We have police surveillance on us all.
And you might be in that small percentage.
Give me 1 second, Councilman.
And I'm not trying to say that it was not horrible for you. But as a system and class and racism, it happens in mass.
As you know, we are in unprecedented times. We are being challenged to open our eyes, minds, and hearts. This has not been easy. I must both listen and act. I must both use my privilege and my humility.
I don't know about you, but in the last several months with COVID and the riots, I see how animalistic humans really are. I'm not ready to remove my safety net. People have already gotten away with too much. People have to have consequences, and our country is spoiled.
I'm in support of examining this possibility more closely and really understanding what activists are proposing.
It's the way you look. It's the way you feel. You're awesome. You can do this. You're so great. You can do it.
I think a lot of it is first having a coalition of and people who are on different ends of the spectrum talk and try to find a common medium or try to support each other.
And then I have a whole concept behind C4, and it's gonna be dope.
I think why we came to the conclusion to start the nonprofit of C4TP is because, you know, we are done just being in the background and trying to, like, you know, ask for what we want. So, you know what, we're gonna go above that. Light a little fire under some butts.
Mission statement: a coalition of people dedicated to fighting and eradicating injustice and reforming the institutions that enable it.
Bam! I'm planning on still hosting a Juneteenth event, but we're not gonna do it on the 19th. We're gonna do it on the 20th, and it's gonna be a protest because they can't tell us we can't protest on City Hall and have food and feed the homeless.
Yeah, last protest was a party to me.
That's what I was saying. We had music. I already have same thing.
I want my people to be free.
You put out good things into the universe, it gives it back, and you ask and you shall receive. If you're, you know, positive, and these individuals, we all just came together and we had one, you know, goal, and we just said, you know what, we're tired of being just in the background. We're actually gonna do something about it.
Since I have a skill set that would enable me to like build some sort of little web-based application, that's what I did. And so the app has like there are a few different things I was hoping to achieve with it. Like the kind of starts out with just a bit of an explainer about like what the problem is. After a bit of an explanation about that, the app basically has this interactive component where you can play around with the proposed budget and basically reallocate funding to different areas depending on what your priorities are.
Well, there's a lot of great resources in our community, and they're a little bit hard to navigate and find, but they're out there. And there's things like, you know, rent support, mortgage support. There's, you know, like St. Vincent de Paul, like, can help you with furnishing your house, and all sorts of other financial support programs. I mean, there's a lot, from mental health to behavioral health to really the whole gamut. You can find it all. And an organization I'm involved with is called FlagstaffResources.com. It's a website. And it basically has like a Google listing style page of all of our local resources on one website, and has all the different filters you can navigate through to find the resource that best meets your needs.
We had a really long discussion with some other organizers yesterday, sort of talking about what our roles are. We're using a Game of Thrones metaphor, which I would be Varys in that metaphor. Sort of just listening to information from other parties and moving it around when events are, what donations we need at events, stuff like that, you know, how many people are going to be like working the water booth or doing trash pickup or whatever. But I kind of do a little bit of everything.
Well, it just kind of started as a small thing to help out with our local events, and then it kind of transitioned into the idea of creating a strong enough community force that ultimately makes the police obsolete.
You got your gun on you? Fist up, flash down, get the fuck out of town!
What are you gonna do when these individuals who are conservative and liberal got these guns out here, and you're like, oh, who's gonna, you know, we don't got police officers, they ain't got no weapons, because y'all want to take those away too. So what are y'all gonna do?
Right here, hey, right here, motherfucker! Right here, take this! Guys, come on, you ain't worth it! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! He's got a fucking gun! He's got it!
A white supremacist pulled a gun on a crowd of people, stopped in the middle of an intersection, got out of his car, tried to instigate a fight with peaceful protesters, pulled his weapon, and instantly the cops surrounded him to protect him instead of the people whose lives were in danger at the time. If I would have pulled my weapon in the same manner, I have no doubt in my mind that I would have been shot by the police.
Yeah, you can go buy weapons, but then you want it to be, it's literally gonna be a war zone. So there has to be some kind of reforming of the system that was built on oppression.
So I was just going to ask a very serious question of what happens when we do abolish our police department.
That's a great question.
It is.
Because this is radical, no?
Oh, very radical.
Yeah.
Way out of turn. I'm 65 years old, okay? I wouldn't want to be to where I wouldn't be able to call 911 and have somebody protect me.
I understand people's fears because we do live in a system and a society that conditions us to rely on the police for certain things that may happen in our lives. But if we bring a lot of that money back into our communities, as well as building community relationships and stronger, more independent communities, most of these issues that we call in armed men for, there's no reason to have to do that.
Something that's being tried, neighborhood dispute resolution. So that means that in certain kind of neighborhoods, you'll have individuals that are trained in dispute resolution, and whenever there's a dispute that is relatively minor, right? Not, you then, instead of engaging the police, you engage local individuals that then can respond in that. So these are systems that are starting to be built.
The guy showed up belligerent and drunk. He was drinking vodka from a Gatorade bottle. The group of us, especially the Sharps and several of our other, the people that we're working with, we immediately just surrounded the guy and made it clear that we were not going to allow him to antagonize and potentially injure any of our people. So SHARP stands for Skinheads Against Racial Prejudice. Normally when people hear the word skinhead, they automatically assume Nazi. And that's absolutely not the case. There's no such thing as a Nazi skinhead.
You ain't no one. I'm not, bitch. Look up what a real fucking skinhead is, you dumb motherfucker. You're in the wrong. I'm a fucking shark. Fuck you. Shark, motherfucker. Fuck you.
And I think that we handled the situation pretty well. I probably would not have gone to the police for any sort of assistance. I think eventually he would have left.
Hey, sir. I appreciate you coming out and exercise your rights, but we do have a city ordinance right now, a mandate from the mayor that says if you're going to be within 6 feet of others, you have to have a mask. All right. Train station's right up there. You see Amtrak? Hold on, you don't have the signal yet. You got to wait for the white hand.
If he was a native guy, you guys would already have him in the fucking jail.
That's not true.
Matt Deering is, was a pretty well-known figure in the unsheltered community. Lots of character. We used to hold weekly meals here at Tullahoe Info Shop. He would help cook, he would help clean, he would help set up. After a while, he expressed deep interest in bikes and so forth, and so we had a lot of broken bikes in the back, so he repaired them and helped us distribute them for folks who needed them and so forth. And so he was a great figure and very helpful. He was always a chill person.
What's up, Matt?
How you doing?
Not too bad, man. How are you?
Doing all right.
Yeah? What are you up to today?
I was riding around.
Okay.
Trying to fix my bike.
I'm sorry?
I was gonna fix my bike.
Oh, okay. What's wrong with it?
Well, the brake caliper,
some brake issues.
Caliper right there keeps bumping up, so I was gonna fix it.
What I did was I took used broken down bicycles and I built them back up for the public, for people's kids and people who didn't have anything, so they can get around a little easier in Flagstaff, because it's hard to walk all over Flag and even afford bus tickets.
I was 2 weeks into the guidance center, halfway through the program, and we were coming back from an AA meeting downtown Flagstaff by the bus terminal, the Downtown Connection Center. Okay, we were coming back in the van when I looked over and I seen all the lights, and that's why the traffic was all backed up. And when I looked out the window, I saw his bike flipped over on the sidewalk.
It seems like you guys have been trying to stop me today for some reason.
I just saw you, thought I'd come say hi.
You didn't even say hi.
Hi.
And then after Matt, who's cooperative, right? He's just like, okay, what's the point of this? I'm just going about my business.
Where are you staying at these days? Still staying at Talhogan or somewhere else?
No, I was staying at the Hogan, but no, I've been staying with friends at motels and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Very clear that he knows Matt, this law enforcement agent has familiarity with him, asks him if he's staying at the info shop here, you know, and has, you know, it's this sort of weird approach about it.
We just over grabbing some food over at Giant?
Yeah.
Nice. Gotta get that milk high in calcium. You got that BB gun on you today?
No, I got rid of that.
You got rid of it?
Just took that from somebody who fucking pointed it at me, you know?
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I gave that fucking thing away though. I don't have it.
That's good, man.
I'm trying to get shot at.
Yeah, that's dangerous. You got any other weapons on you besides that knife that's on your bike?
My knives.
I'm sorry?
The other knives that I carry.
Okay. Alright.
Why are you asking me all that?
Just like to know where weapons are. You're usually pretty chill, but some people aren't. I try to ask everybody, keep it consistent. I don't want to treat people differently, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
You have a good day, sir.
Yeah.
Work on this.
Okay, well, unfortunately at the moment you are under arrest. You
What?
got a warrant.
For?
Get on the ground!
What
Get
for?
on the ground, you got a warrant.
What are you doing, asshole?
You got a warrant. Get on the ground.
Hey, dude.
Get on the ground.
You just started trying to attack
Get on the
me and
ground.
shit?
You're under arrest. You have a warrant. You got a warrant. Stop.
Hey, fucking, you know what the hell are you doing?
Hey, 40, we're fighting.
Well, I wasn't aware I had a warrant at the time. If he'd have just told me that to begin with, I would have, I'd have complied. I just was, resisting, I guess, on account that he was attacking me. You know, I was startled that he had grabbed me like that for no reason.
Hey, look, dude.
Get on the ground.
Get off of me, home.
Get on the ground. Get on the ground.
Oh, fucker. What are you doing, man? Get off me, man.
Get on the ground.
You just started attacking me, homie. Don't do that shit.
Get on the ground.
Don't attack me, dude.
Get on the ground.
On the ground.
You're gonna get sprayed if you don't get on the fucking ground right now. You understand me? Get on the ground.
You attacked me, dude. How are you gonna fucking do that shit?
40 OC deployed.
You fucking asshole.
Get on the ground.
What are you doing? No.
No! You drop that fucking knife right now!
I don't have a knife.
You know, whatever prayers were with Matt that day, it's miraculous that he survived.
41 in custody.
You just shot me in the head.
You're not.
Ow! I'm tingling all over.
But the injustice continues extremely after that. It doesn't stop with that violation, with that incident escalating so far that this law enforcement agent shoots him in the neck.
It was a long recovery. I got shot right in the neck, and it came out kind of the other side, and it just touched my spine. Yeah, I have an entry wound and an exit wound.
Give me get a chest seal out of that. It's in the back.
I can't believe you just shot me in the fucking head, asshole.
Stop, dude.
Oh my god, man. Over what, dude? Over nothing, huh?
Ms. Strom, no more cards? That is the end of the comment cards for agenda item number 4. Okay. Thank you very much to Ms. Strom, Ms. Anderson, and Mr. Dilly for reading those public comment cards to us. It was greatly appreciated.
They passed the budget unanimously, as you know, but I think we kind of put in people's minds that there can be things different.
Specifically, their training budget was actually cut. That training budget, which is not even does not even calculate out to $300 per officer, right? That training budget is what's responsible for those officers' mental health first aid trainings, what's responsible for their implicit bias trainings, what's responsible for all of these, for weapons safety training, so that they don't so that they understand the context of when to use a particular weapon.
Any violent crimes or anything like that, they should attend to anything like that. But all that just stopping and just like saying, they pulled up to say hi is just bullcrap. That's just an open door for
I think that the American white mental health system has not done a great job of learning, in particular, how to work with Navajo, with Hopi, indigenous cultures that really is deeply respectful.
They say, what did you get out of all that screaming and yelling? And I look them right in the eyes and I said, we got organized.
As an elected official, I can't organize the way I used to organize. So I'm grateful that you all are organizing the way you are, because I think what you're advocating for is right on. And I fully support and agree with what you all are advocating for and saying. And we need change.
I think that protesting at City Hall is probably the least useful thing that we can do. People go there because it's the usual place, because there's high visibility, because of traffic. So who's our audience? People driving around Flagstaff at a certain hour? What are we doing to actually challenge power?
If we're wondering what the effects of protest are in the short term and in the long term, you can think of them as earthquakes. You can think of them as generally we go through society in a particular kind of change where we're changing a little bit like this, right? You can think of these kinds of movements, when movements arise this quickly and this fast, you can think of it as doing this, pump, qua, like that. A quick, super sharp moment where things change, sometimes way faster than an ability to comprehend the change. So what we just experienced was a earthquake in what we consider to be the common sense. And then all of a sudden you get, the city council in Minneapolis disbanding their police. They disbanded the police, and they're going to rebuild it in some particular way. So what was completely far out here now is actual policy in a big city in the United States. And I guarantee you that it's probably going to be followed very closely, and it might be replicated in other ways. So when we ask what the point of protest is, or what protest does, that's what it does.
This town would be a perfect size of a town to do, defund and abolish police kind of program here with more social services. We don't have a very big area of people, and we can definitely be able to, hopefully do something. And I think that's what, and the protests kind of brought about, is that if we want to see change, we can't necessarily just depend on our local government and those people. We're going to have to start doing it ourselves and doing the work for ourselves.
And so when we see these uprisings happening from Baltimore to Minneapolis, to even the small uprisings here in Flagstaff on different levels, it is clear that folks are willing to put themselves out there and put themselves on the line.
Hopefully the things that we do now will be seen in the future. So I just don't want people to give up if they don't see change within the next 10 years, because it's a whole life. We always say it's not a race, it's a marathon, but I think when people say that, they don't realize this is a lifelong marathon, and it might even be after us, but it will be changed one day, I believe.